New reports out this morning say that the CIA has been paying AT&T for access to international phone records belonging to terror suspects. It's the latest government spying tactic that stretches beyond just the National Security Agency, which of course has been under heavy fire. What, if any, changes can we expect? California's Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff is a member of the House Intelligence Committee. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning, Chris.
I wonder what you think about this. Any sense that you might have of how big the operation is, how many international phone records the CIA has been accessing?
Chris, I can't comment on that specifically, but I can say I think Senator Feinstein has exactly the right approach, and that is to do a wholesale review of our programs overseas. We have a lot less transparency on some of those programs that are conducted under the Executive Order 12333 than we do under the domestic programs. And I think the situation is that our growth and capability over the last decade or two has really dwarfed, I think, the analysis that should have gone along with it, in the sense that, are these programs all desirable? Do they have to have the magnitude that they do? What kind of results are they bearing? Now, many of the overseas operations we do bear enormous fruit. They do help protect the country, and not only that, they help protect our allies. And so sometimes our allied governments benefit the most from our intelligence collection because we're able to tip them off on plots involving their capitals, their transportation systems. But plainly, there are costs, too, as we saw in the whole flap over the alleged eavesdropping on Chancellor Merkel's phone. So I think we have to have a broad rethink of our intelligence policies abroad and also restructuring some of the programs here at home.
And as we rethink that, I mean, when you take this AT&T thing, it is a bit different amid all the Edward Snowden disclosures, because a lot of companies, as a result of that, cried foul. But in this case, and in some other instances, this surveillance is done voluntarily. In other words, with the cooperation and the agreement of the company, like AT&T. Does that make a difference?
Well, you know, if the allegations are true, it does make a difference. But probably from the point of view of the American people and their privacy interests, or the privacy interests of those overseas, it doesn't matter whether to them it's a matter of agreement with a company or whether it's under the supervision of a court. The privacy interests are still the same. I do think that the private companies, both the internet companies, the telephone companies, etc., are in an absolutely awful and impossible situation where they're trying to do business overseas. They need to have the confidence of people overseas. All of these leaks are really jeopardizing their business. They want to be good citizens. They want to be good patriots. They also want to comply with the law when they're given lawful court orders or subpoenas. So they're in an impossible situation, and that's one of the factors that I think we need to consider as we evaluate these programs, and that is, what's the economic impact as well as the national security impact? So a little different frame that we have to put these through than we have probably in the past, and this review is probably well overdue, but I do have great sympathy for what the private companies are going through, because they've got these impossible competing demands. You
and the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Mike Rogers, have had some back and forth, and on Sunday he said that the threat of al-Qaeda attacks is still very real, but that the political posturing is clouding that. Let me play that.
It is the NSA, the CIA, and others charged to make sure that zero of them happen here. Zero. That's our standard. And so what we've asked them to do is go out and collect information that protects America. So every politician in Washington, both Republican and Democrat, are seized up by this hyper-partisanship and can't wait to put out a press release how terrible our intelligence services are.
And in addition to that, let me just say, Congressman, that I literally was just handed a piece of paper from a hearing that's going on in the UK, and the head of the British intelligence chief just said at that hearing, apparently, al-Qaeda is lapping up Edward Snowden's spy leaks. Britain's enemies are rubbing their hands with glee. Let me get your overall assessment of that and what you hear, frankly, to that point from Mike Rogers.
Well, I would say a couple things. First of all, I agree with the al-Qaeda remains very dangerous. These franchises pose a continuing and very real threat, so we have to be aggressive in going after them. But that's not an excuse for structuring programs in a way that unnecessarily intrude on our privacy or that aren't as efficient and effective as they can be. So I don't think it's simply enough to say, well, al-Qaeda is still a threat, therefore carte blanche for the intelligence community. We have a responsibility in Congress to make sure that everything we do is constitutional, that it's effective, and that these programs are structured in a way that minimizes any unnecessary intrusion on our privacy. One other, point I would make in disagreement with Chairman Rogers is this is not a partisan issue. There are a great many Republicans who equally take issue. In fact, some of the leadership of the effort to restructure the metadata program has come from GOP quarters. So it's really not a Democrat versus Republican, and the lines actually cross-cut in many interesting ways. But I do think we have an obligation that goes beyond simply saying, well, there are threats out there, therefore we give the intelligence community, complete say over what goes on. That's not what the American people want. They want a balance between security and privacy, and they don't want unnecessary intrusions on our privacy in the name of security.
Democratic Congressman Schiff, thank you so much. Always good to have you on the program.
Thanks, Chris.